All right, welcome everyone to this video. So we'll be looking at how to, analyze recommendations for research papers. So recommendations are an integral part of your research or academic paper. And we can say, or I can say that an academic paper is never complete without the recommendation section. By the way, I've seen papers rejected because they didn't have recommendation sections. I think it's because the recommendation is more like your innovation. It's more like what you bring into the table. It's more like the next step that you are instructing us or guiding or suggesting we should take after presenting your findings. So they are very, very crucial aspect of academic papers, irrespective of the type of paper you're writing. So let's go on to look at how to analyze our recommendations, the different things we need to look at for different sections of the recommendation that we need to work on. So the first thing is stating out your point. State out your point to be as clear and succinct as possible. Now there is an example here for us. This is called from the paper by Fion, Elevesun and Babatunde. This is the point. This is your recommendation. There is also a great need to adjust from the nation's focus on curative medicine and lay more emphasis on preventive medicine, which is one of the roles primary care centers play. That is their point, that is their recommendation. Very clear, straight to point, and brief. Now, next thing you need to consider or you need to do is to ask yourself the question, how is this true? You have to explain your point if need be. There are times that after stating the point is not clear enough in itself, you have to try and explain it. In this case, the authors did not, maybe because it was clear enough, and also because of the type of paper they were writing, because in a later, which was the paper, this example was gotten from the letter to the editor. You have to be really, really judicious with your words because of the limited word count. Next thing is for you to ask yourself the question, how is this point important? You need to justify that this point, this recommendation is important for us to do in this situation, that it can solve the problem we have at hand, that will gain from implementing this recommendation. And sometimes, not all the time, you have to justify that this recommendation is feasible. You have to show us that we can do this. I mean, sometimes you show us how we can do this. Sometimes it stands separately on its own. How can we do this? Let's look at the examples from the authors. When more efforts are made through primary care centers to cover the basic health needs of the citizens, the overall health and well-being of the nation's citizens will be preserved. Now, when more efforts are made through primary care centers to cover the basic health needs of the citizens, is the recommendation or the plan of action the authors are putting forward. The overall health and well-being of the nation's citizens will be preserved. So this is the gain that we are expecting from this impact plan or from this recommendation. And the emergence of complex medical conditions will be lowered. So this is like the problem that this recommendation is hoping to solve. Now, the author said nothing about the feasibility. They didn't tell us if it is feasible or if it's not going to be feasible. They didn't tell us how we can do this. Like I said, sometimes you have to consider the scope of the paper you're writing. For special articles and short articles, you don't need to be too elaborate in your recommendation. Maybe in reviews or in original articles, you might want to analyze more to consider the feasibility. I mean, for example, if we say hem health should be used, or you're recommending hem health for use in infectious disease outbreaks, you might need to talk about the how can this happen in your recommendation. You might need to talk about how government stakeholders can collaborate with network providers and primary care providers and the citizens themselves. That will form the part of the how can we do this in your recommendation. Step 3, what evidence exists? Where and when did this policy, this action plan work out? You need to show that this recommendation had worked in a similar situation in time past, or maybe in a similar population, in a different population. For example, let's look at what the author said. This is very, this is very evident in the fact that immunization campaigns greatly prevent the re-emergence of infectious diseases. And as species play a role in the implementation and sustenance of immunization activities, their place in the goal of disease prevention is quite clear. So the authors are showing us the role primary care centers played in immunization campaigns, and the immunization campaigns themselves greatly prevented the re-emergence of infectious diseases. So they are showing us how primary care centers were effective in something entirely different. And this is an evidence that okay, it is possible that this particular thing can work in this particular situation. So the importance of providing evidence is that you give the reader, you give the stakeholder, you give the policymaker confidence that it is not abstract, it is not an abstract idea, that this had actually worked, because most times people are more moved by um, um, finding new uses for all things. I mean, if you show them new ways of using their phone, using their pens, and these are common things that they have been using. But if you show them new ways of doing it, they are more interesting. And also it gives them the confidence that since this had worked the other time in these settings, it can work in this other setting too. Additional tips. Writing a good recommendation is a combination of scholarly and critical thinking. So you need to read so many literatures to go through different recommendations. Always have a benchmark. You cannot exhaust all the literatures online. So when you go through the information available on literature, some of these questions are available on literatures. Some of them you have to think them through. So you kind of connect the information to your context. Please always connect information to your context. Because this recommendation worked in America doesn't mean it can work in Nigeria, because Nigeria has its own peculiarities. I mean, economically, health-wise, I mean, education-wise, all these things are determinants of health in itself. So a recommendation that worked in an economical or a well-educated setting may not work in a terrible economy. So you need to understand this context, you need to understand the population behavior. These are the things that will determine if this recommendation can work in this particular setting. Thank you very much. I really hope this is helpful. Remember to state your point clearly and succinctly. Remember to explain the point. Remember to justify how this point is important, how it can solve the problem, how it will be gainful. Remember to show evidence of where and how this was done. remember that writing a good recommendation is a combination of scholarly and critical thinking skills. Thank you very much. I really hope this video is helpful.